Listen to me and listen carefully, because this might be the most important thing you hear in your entire life. There's something happening right now. Right now, while you're scrolling, while you're hesitating, while you're doubting yourself. Time is moving. And I'll tell you something nobody else will. Your youth is being stolen, not by enemies on the outside, but by the distractions, the emotions, the weakness you allow on the inside. And if you don't wake up, if you don't take control, you will look back and realize you traded power for pleasure. And that, folks, is a terrible deal. Let me tell you something about youth. It's not just a phase. It's not just fun and games. Youth is the most valuable asset you will ever, more valuable than money, more valuable than influence, more valuable than anything the world can hand you, because it's the only thing you can't get back. Once it's gone, it's gone. And the problem is people waste it trying to impress people who don't even matter. Total disaster. You see, people today, they live like emotions are everything. Like if you feel it, it must be true. Wrong. Very wrong. Your emotions were never built to lead. They were built to follow. You let feelings run your life, you'll crash it into a wall every single time. That's what weak people do. But you're not weak. You're not. And I'll tell you why. Because if you were, you wouldn't be listening right now. You want to be great. You want to win, and stop trying to belong. Detachment is power. Say it again. Detachment is power. I don't care how popular someone is. I don't care how many followers they have. If they can't walk away from nonsense, they're owned. And I don't do ownership like that. Never have. Never will. Some of the strongest people I've ever met, and believe me, I've met the strongest, they didn't chase feelings, they chased purpose. They didn't fall in love with attention, they fell in love with the mission. Because when you're focused, when you're chosen, when you have something bigger than yourself to live for, you don't have time to be offended, depressed, distracted, or emotionally unstable. That's small thinking. That's how people lose. And by the way, being spiritual doesn't mean being soft, and no, it means being untouchable. It means being in the world, but not of, it means knowing you were built for more than scrolling endlessly, binge watching, failure, or falling apart every time somebody doesn't text you back. That's for amateurs. That's for spectators. You're here to build. You're here to dominate. You're here to lead. You don't get your youth back. You can rebuild money, rebuild relationships, rebuild reputation, but you cannot rebuild time. And while others are out partying with no purpose, you're supposed to be sharpening your vision. While they're crying over people who never valued them, you're supposed to be building a future people can't ignore. And when they finally wake up, they'll be working for you. Now listen, people will mock you for detaching. They'll say you've changed. You're distant. You don't laugh at their foolishness anymore. You don't cry over nonsense. That's right. You're rising. You're ascending. You're not available for drama. You're not wasting your youth trying to save people who refuse to save themselves. You want to be liked? Go be average. You want to be great? Get comfortable being misunderstood. Because purpose doesn't fit in with popularity. And you can't walk on water if you're still holding hands with people drowning in distraction. You don't need 100 people to clap for you. You need one mission that wakes you up in the morning. And if it costs your comfort, your friendships, your emotional attachments, so be it. Greatness is not cheap. And youth is the currency you use to buy your future. People ask me all the time, how did you do it? How did you stay so focused, so dominant when others fell apart? I'll tell you, I was never addicted to being understood. I was addicted to results. And I didn't cry when people left. I celebrated because it meant I had room to rise. You've got something burning inside of you. I know it. I can feel it. But you've been distracted. You've been emotional. You've been soft. And that's not who you are. That's who the world wants you to be, because a distracted generation is a defeated generation. But you're not for sale. Your detachment is not bitterness. It's brilliance. It's the first sign that your soul is maturing, that your vision is sharpening, and that you're finally waking up to what you were born to do. So stop giving away your time. Stop explaining yourself. Stop trying to be everything to everyone. Be who God called you to be, and never, ever apologize for that. You weren't made for comfort. You were made for conquest. Let me know when you're ready for the next topic. Youth is God's investment in you, and he expects a return. That is the truth most people don't want to hear. You weren't given energy, time, creativity, and potential just to waste it on distractions. Every day you wake up young, you're standing on borrowed capital, divine capital. And when God gives, he gives with expectation. He didn't place fire inside you so you could play with smoke. He gave you strength so you could build. He gave you time so you could transform, and he gave you freedom so you could choose the narrow road, the higher road, the road that leads to destiny. But most people trade it all for what feels good in the moment. That's the great robbery of youth. It's not taken by time. It's traded for convenience. You think the world owes you patience? That it's going to wait while you figure it out? No. Life doesn't wait. Purpose doesn't pause, and destiny won't beg. That's why youth is precious, because it's limited. The world wants you entertained, emotional, overstimulated, because a distracted youth is a defeated youth. But you weren't born for defeat. You were born to multiply what was placed in your hands. You were born to take what God gave you, time, energy, opportunity, and return it greater, stronger, purer. Every second you waste trying to impress people who have no stake in your future is a second you rob from the life you were meant to build. You're not just living, you're investing. The question is, in what is your time going into purpose or popularity? Is your strength going into building something eternal or feeding something temporary? Because God didn't give you this season of youth so you could copy broken trends, mimic lost people, and echo empty voices. He gave it so you could stand out, rise up, and leave a mark. Your youth is your seed. What you plant now, you'll harvest later. If you plant discipline, you'll harvest freedom. If you plant vision, you'll harvest leadership. But if you plant laziness, fear, and comfort, don't expect to reap legacy, power, or peace. The most tragic thing is not growing old, is growing old with regret, knowing you had everything and gave nothing. And don't think you can fool God with excuses. He doesn't want excuses. He wants evidence. Show him you didn't bury the gift. Show him you didn't sleep on the calling. Show him you didn't fear the storm. You walked through it. Youth isn't an escape from responsibility. It's the starting point of it. And if you don't return what he invested, you're not just wasting time. You're defaulting on a divine trust. So when you wake up tomorrow, understand it's not just another day. It's another deposit, another opportunity to build something heaven can be proud of. And at the end of it all, you will be asked, what did you do with what I gave you? Make sure you have an answer, a real one. Your emotions are not your master. Your mission is. That's a hard truth for many to accept, especially in a world that constantly tells you to follow your heart and do what feels right. But if your emotions are leading, your life is losing. Emotions are real, but they're not always right. They fluctuate. They're unstable. 1 minute they lift you up, the next they drown you. And if you're the kind of person who makes decisions based on how you feel rather than what you're called to do, then you'll never build anything that lasts. There's a difference between being alive and being in control. Too many people are alive but out of control, reacting, exploding, quitting, crying, comparing, always chasing validation, always needing approval. But people who live like that never accomplish much. They never finish the race because they stop to argue with every voice along the way. You weren't created to be ruled by every wave of emotion that passes through your chest. You were created to master your inner world so you could conquer the outer one. The mission is greater than your mood. Purpose doesn't care how you feel today. It doesn't stop because you're anxious or offended or tired. And the ones who win, the ones who rise, are not the ones who feel the best. They're the ones who keep going regardless of how they feel. That's strength. That's what separates the average from the unstoppable. Emotions come and go, but purpose must stay. You can't build destiny on unstable ground. If your choices shift with your feelings, then your life becomes a house built on sand. It looks good for a while, but one storm, one heartbreak, one disappointment, and it all crumbles. But when you're anchored to your mission, when you're tied to something bigger than your feelings, storms may come, but they don't take you down. You don't just survive, you advance. Detachment from emotion doesn't mean you're cold. It means you're clear. You can feel sadness without becoming a victim. You can feel anger without being reckless. You can feel fear without running. Emotional maturity is spiritual warfare. And when you learn to take authority over your emotions, you become unshakable, untouchable, dangerous to everything that once kept you small. God never told you to trust your feelings. He said, trust him. and he never changes. That's where your anchor belongs, not in the fleeting whispers of emotion, but in the eternal truth of who you are and why you're here. Your mission has to matter more than your moment. If it doesn't, you'll sacrifice legacy for comfort, impact for applause, calling for convenience. When feelings rise up to distract you, delay you, or derail you, remind yourself who you are. You are not here to be emotionally managed. You are here to lead, to build, to finish. And every time you choose purpose over emotion, you make heaven proud. Every time you walk through the fire without flinching, you grow. And growth is what you were born for. Spiritual detachment is a weakness. It's dominance over distractions. People think detachment means not caring, being cold, being distant. They don't understand detachment doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means your feelings don't stop you. It means you've reached a place where you no longer give everything access to your soul. You don't allow noise to interrupt your peace. You don't hand over your clarity to chaos. That's not weakness. That's strength. Most people will never know. We live in a world that glorifies attachment to opinions, to validation, to likes, to trends, to people who drain you, and it's killing purpose. The more attached you are to temporary things, the more enslaved you become to temporary outcomes. But when you're spiritually detached, when your worth isn't tied to anything external, you become free from manipulation, free from addiction to praise, free from needing the world to confirm what God has already said about you. You can't carry out a divine mission while being emotionally entangled with everything and everyone. Some people are addicted to being needed, addicted to being seen, addicted to being understood. That's not purpose. That's bondage. And it keeps you distracted, drained, and off course. You start making decisions not based on truth, but based on fear of loss. You stay in places God has called you out of. You tolerate what you were supposed to conquer, and all of it because you were too attached to let go. Detachment sharpens your vision. It silences the noise. It brings you into alignment with heaven. When you no longer need everything to go your way, when you no longer need people to treat you perfectly, when you no longer need to be understood, that's when you become dangerous to the kingdom of darkness, because nothing can stop a person who has nothing to prove and nothing to lose. Detachment is clarity, and clarity is power. Spiritual detachment isn't isolation, it's insulation. You're not cutting yourself off from love. You're cutting yourself off from dependency. You're not ignoring people. You're just not letting people steer your ship. When your identity is rooted in the eternal, the temporary doesn't rattle you. When your joy comes from obedience, applause feels small. When your heart belongs to purpose, distractions feel like betrayal. God doesn't bless the double-minded. He doesn't use the emotionally entangled. He uses the available, the grounded, the ones who can walk through rejection, silence, betrayal, and keep their eyes on the mission. When you're detached, you move with authority. You say yes when it's time. You say no without guilt. You walk away without begging. You endure without complaining. You weren't called to be tossed by every wave. You were called to command the storm. And the only way to do that is to step back from everything that tries to own you. When your spirit is detached from the noise, your steps become order. And in that stillness and that divine discipline, purpose is fulfilled and greatness is born. Being liked by everyone is the fastest way to become no one. You try to please everybody and you end up pleasing nobody, not even yourself. You dilute your identity, you compromise your values, you bend your truth just to avoid conflict, rejection, or misunderstanding. That's not love. That's self-betrayal. The need to be liked is a trap, and it's one of the most dangerous prisons a person can live in. The more you chase acceptance, the further you run from authenticity. And without authenticity, you lose the only thing that makes you powerful, who you truly are. People-pleasing isn't kindness. It's fear in disguise. Fear of being judged. Fear of standing out. Fear of walking alone. But let me tell you something, every world changer, every visionary, every giant had to walk through a season where they were misunderstood, disliked, even hated. And they kept going because they weren't chasing approval, they were chasing purpose. They didn't fold when the crowd turned. They didn't shrink when the critics shouted. They stood, And when the dust cleared, they were still standing, not because they were liked, but because they were rooted. You can't lead and follow at the same time. And when your worth depends on who claps for you, you'll always be a puppet. You'll shift to fit the room. You'll change your tone, your message, your mission, all to fit people who don't even know where they're going. And by the time you realize it, you've built a life around the expectations of others, and none of it reflects who you really are. You don't rise by being agreeable, you rise by being unshakable. There will be moments when you're called to speak the truth and it won't be popular. You'll lose friends. You'll be mocked. You'll be called arrogant, distant, difficult. And in those moments, you will be tempted to soften, to retreat, to explain yourself. Don't let them misunderstand you. Let them walk away. Because if being real costs you relationships, those relationships were never rooted in truth to begin with. And if keeping peace with others means creating war within yourself, it's not peace, it's manipulation. You were not designed to be average, agreeable, and invisible. You were designed to carry light. And light doesn't blend in. It exposes, it convicts, it disrupts darkness. And darkness never claps for the light, it fights it. So if the world loves everything you say and do, it might mean you've turned your light down low enough to make people comfortable. That's not humility, that's hiding. And hiding is the enemy of impact. You don't need everyone to like you. You need to be real. You need to be grounded. You need to be unwavering in who you are and what you carry. Stop asking for permission to be who God made you to be. Stop apologizing for being bold, for having standards, for refusing to shrink. When you stop trying to be liked, you start becoming legendary. And legendary people are never for everyone, but they're always true to themselves. True confidence comes from purpose, not praise. Praise is fleeting. One day they love you, the next they turn on you. If your confidence is built on the applause of people, then you're only as strong as their mood, and that's a weak foundation. But when your confidence comes from purpose, from knowing exactly why you're here, what you're called to do, and who sent you, no one can take that away. That kind of confidence is rooted. It's untouchable. It doesn't shake under pressure, and it doesn't break when ignored. People confuse confidence with ego, but ego demands attention. Confidence demands nothing. Real confidence walks in the room and doesn't need to be announced. It doesn't need the spotlight. It brings the light. You don't have to scream, look at me, walk in purpose, and the right ones will notice, the wrong ones won't, and that's fine, because confidence is not about being noticed by people, it's about being aligned with heaven. When you're purpose-driven, you don't shrink for comfort, you don't exaggerate for applause. You know who you are and you know what you carry. You're not trying to impress, you're trying to impact, you're not trying to fit in, you're trying to fulfill. You don't live for likes, you live for legacy. That's the difference between shallow confidence and unshakable confidence. Some people live off compliments. They need someone to tell them they're good enough, smart enough, attractive enough. But if your confidence needs to be fed every day by the approval of others, you'll starve the moment silence hits. Purpose-driven confidence doesn't need validation. It stands on revelation. You already know, you already believe, you already decided. And when the world goes silent, when people walk away, when the support dries up, you keep moving because you weren't built on praise. You were built on promise. You can see it in people. Some glow when they're being celebrated and fall apart when they're criticized. That's not confidence. That's performance. You're not here to perform, you're here to lead. And leaders lead with purpose, not applause, because applause is seasonal, but purpose is eternal. You weren't called to be the loudest voice. You were called to be the clearest. And when your purpose is clear, your confidence is automatic. You don't have to hype yourself up. You're already aligned. You don't need 10 people to agree with you. One yes from heaven is enough. That's where real confidence is born, in silence and obedience, in the secret moments when nobody sees and you still show up, you still deliver, you still press forward. The world teaches you to build confidence by being seen. God teaches you to build it by being sent. And when you're sent, you don't need claps. You don't need approval. You just move. That's how kings operate. That's how warriors walk. That's how purpose becomes power, not by being praised, but by being anchored. And when you're anchored, you don't chase confidence, you become it. The greatest victories are won in silence, not in the crowd. People think power is loud. They think victory means the world clapping, cheering, shouting your name. That's not real. That's noise. Real victory happens when nobody's watching, when there's no camera, no recognition, no crowd, just you, your discipline, your decisions, and your war with the inner world. That's where the battle is. That's where champions are made. Not in front of people, but when it's just you and God. We live in a time where everyone wants to be seen. They want to announce every move, document every step, perform for validation. But the loudest ones are often the weakest, because when your strength depends on being noticed, you're only as powerful as your last compliment. That's not strength. That's survival. And you can't win real battles living for applause. Some of your greatest breakthroughs will come in seasons where no one knows your name, no one sees your struggle, and no one is clapping, but you keep going anyway. There's power in silence, in doing the work quietly, in building behind the scenes. When you fight your demons without needing sympathy, when you rise from failure without posting about it, when you train in private so that one day you can show up in public with undeniable strength. That's how legacies are built. Not with hype, but with humility. Not with noise, but with consistency. The crowd will never understand the cost of the crown. They see the success, not the sacrifice. They see the result, not the wrestle. And if you're addicted to being seen, you'll give up the process just to impress people who weren't even assigned to your destiny. You'll settle for being loud when you were meant to be legendary. Victory in silence means knowing you're progressing even when nobody claps. It means building discipline when nobody's watching. It means saying no to distractions when nobody will praise you for it. It means choosing integrity when compromise would be easier. That's the unseen work, and that's what builds unshakable strength. Most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they stop when no one notices. They think silence means failure. But in reality, silence is the sacred space where transformation happens. When the noise dies down, when the crowd disappears and it's just you, that's where identity is forged. That's where vision sharpens. That's where warriors are born. Don't fear the quiet seasons. Don't despise being unseen. That's where God does his deepest work. That's where your roots grow. That's where your armor is formed. And when the time comes to step into the light, you won't have to scream for attention. Your preparation will speak louder than any applause ever could. The most dangerous person in the room is the one who didn't need the room to become powerful. They were forged in silence. They were tested in solitude. And when they arrive, they don't need to talk about their victory. They are the victory. Every wasted year in youth is a stolen year from your destiny. People don't realize what's being taken from them until it's gone. Youth feels endless when you're in it, like you've got time to spare, years to figure it out, space to drift. But time doesn't wait. Purpose doesn't pause, and every year you spend in distractions, indecision, or laziness is a year you're handing over to regret. That's the harsh truth nobody wants to say out loud. You're not just losing time, you're giving away pieces of your future. Destiny is not a guarantee, it's a potential, it's a divine offer, and you only reach it if you honor the time you've been given. Most people will never fulfill their calling, not because they weren't gifted, but because they spent their best years chasing what didn't matter. They got lost trying to be liked, trying to fit in, trying to prove something. And while they were trying to feel good, their greatness was fading in the background, untouched, undeveloped. Your youth is your building season. That's when your habits are formed. That's when your mind is shaped. That's when your foundation is laid. If you waste those years, you don't just delay success, you damage your future. You start building late, and everything becomes harder. You try to unlearn years of poor choices, dig your way out of debt, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And while healing is possible, why invite unnecessary pain just because you wouldn't take responsibility when it mattered most? People talk about enjoying youth, living free, making mistakes. But freedom without purpose is slavery in disguise. You're not free if you're bound to your impulses. You're not enjoying life if you're sabotaging your future. Every habit you build now, every decision you make, every voice you listen to, it's either building your destiny or breaking it. And if you keep choosing comfort over calling, you'll arrive at a place in life you don't even recognize. And worse, you'll know deep down you were made for more. Look around. The world is full of grown people with broken dreams. Not because God failed them, but because they wasted what he gave them. They didn't steward their youth. They didn't value their time, and now they're stuck trying to relive moments that can't be recovered. That's the real tragedy, not age, regret. The years you're in right now are not just passing time. They're sacred. They're strategic. You've been given strength, clarity, energy, and space, not to waste, but to build. Build your mind, build your character, build your discipline. Because once this window closes, it won't open again. You may still rise later, but you'll be rising with the weight of what you lost. Don't let culture fool you. Don't let distractions blind you. Every wasted year is a theft, and you are either defending your destiny or allowing it to be stolen. The choice is yours, but the cost is real. Detachment creates clarity, and clarity wins wars. When you're emotionally entangled, when you're overwhelmed by noise, opinions, and desires, you can't see straight. You're reactive, unstable, unsure. But when you detach, when you remove your heart from what's clouding your mind, everything becomes sharp. You don't waste time overthinking. You don't drown in confusion. You move with precision. And that's how battles are won. Not by being loud, not by being fast, but by being clear. People lose not because they're weak, but because they're scattered, pulled in 10 directions, always chasing, always adjusting themselves to what others want, what culture promotes, what fear suggests. That kind of life leads nowhere. You can have all the talent in the world, but if your mind is cluttered, your gift will be buried. Clarity is a weapon. It slices through distraction. It exposes lies. It shows you what matters and what doesn't, who's for you and who's just using you. But you can't get clarity until you detach from everything that's contaminating your vision. There's a reason why the most powerful warriors train in solitude. There's a reason why the greatest leaders spend time in silence. Because if your soul is noisy, your strategy will suffer. You'll say yes when you should say no. You'll hold on to people God told you to release. You'll invest in places that will never produce fruit. And all because you didn't pause long enough to detach and discern. Detachment is not indifference. It's not apathy. It's authority. It means you're no longer ruled by your emotions. You're no longer manipulated by pressure. You're not caught up in the moment. You're anchored in the mission. Detachment is what allows you to make hard decisions, to walk away from good opportunities that aren't God opportunities, to say no to comfort when it tries to seduce you, to keep your peace when chaos knocks on your door. And once you have clarity, once you've detached from everything that doesn't align with your calling, you start moving like a different person. You speak with intention. You act with conviction. You stop apologizing for your pace. You stop questioning your direction because you're not operating in confusion anymore. You're walking in vision. Wars are not won by emotion, they're won by clarity. The enemy thrives in confusion. He wants you emotionally attached to things that weaken you. He wants you second-guessing yourself. He wants you dependent on other people's opinion. But when you detach, when you cut off the noise, he loses his grip. You become a threat. You start hearing God more clearly. You start hearing yourself more clearly, and now you're dangerous. Don't let your destiny die in the fog of emotional entanglement. Step back, detach, clean your lens. The vision is already there. The mission is already in motion, but you won't see it until you let go of everything blinding you. Because in war, the clearest mind wins, not the loudest heart. You are not here to survive your youth. You're here to build empires with it. That's the difference between those who drift and those who dominate. Youth is not a vacation. It's not a holding pattern. It's not a time to waste on random pleasures and empty approval. It's a divine window, a sacred opportunity, a launch pad for legacy, and too many people spend it trying to survive, trying to fit in, stay comfortable, avoid risk, stay emotionally safe. But survival is not your purpose. Building is, creating is, advancing is, and you only get one shot to use this foundation correctly. Survival mindsets shrink dreams. They teach you to avoid pain, avoid discomfort, avoid failure. But all the great builders, all the real legends faced failure early, faced rejection early, and they didn't crumble. They didn't survive it. They used it. Because youth isn't about finding yourself. It's about forging yourself. You're not waiting for permission. You're not waiting for experience. You're starting now where you are with what you have and building brick by brick. Empires aren't built overnight. They take vision, strategy, discipline, and long nights of doing what others are too distracted to do. While most people your age are wasting hours chasing pleasure or praise. You're supposed to be writing blueprints, training your mind, strengthening your values, learning skills the world doesn't even know it needs yet. Not because anyone's forcing you, but because you see what they don't. You see the long game. You see the future that hasn't arrived. That's empire thinking. That's purpose-driven youth. The reason most people never build anything with their lives is because they wasted the season when they had the most power to shape it. And what's worse is that they thought they were living, they thought freedom was fun without discipline, they thought being young meant being careless. But when the time comes to lead, to build, to influence, they have nothing to show because they spent their youth surviving when they were meant to be constructing. You don't need to be older to start. You need to be serious. You need to be intentional. The world doesn't hand out crowns for potential. It rewards production. And the longer you wait to build, the harder it becomes. Don't say you're too young. Say you're just in time, because the most powerful people in history didn't wait to be great. They decided early, moved early, and built early. They didn't ask if the world was ready. They made the world adjust. So the question is, are you going to waste your youth surviving situations you were meant to outgrow, or are you going to start building something that echoes beyond your lifetime? Because the tools are already in your hands. The vision is already in your spirit. The timing is already now. You weren't made to survive. You were made to build something eternal, and youth is your foundation. Don't let it rot. Build. Those who are owned by feelings will be ruled by failures. Feelings are powerful, but they are not always loyal. They shift like the wind, and if you build your life on them, you will fall every time they change. The moment your emotions become your master, your destiny becomes a slave. You start reacting instead of leading. You start hesitating when you should be advancing. You stop building when the process doesn't feel good anymore. And that's how failure wins, not because you weren't capable, but because you surrendered your authority to emotion. When your decisions are built on how you feel instead of what you know, you create instability. One day you're on fire, the next you're questioning your purpose. One day you're focused, the next you're quitting over a comment. That's not the mindset of a leader. That's the habit of someone still at the mercy of their emotional weather. But purpose doesn't care about your mood. Destiny doesn't wait for your emotions to align. It moves forward, and either you grow the strength to follow it, or you stay stuck in cycles of defeat. Failure often disguises itself as comfort. It convinces you to stop, to slow down, to settle. And when you're emotionally led, you believe it. You let discouragement talk you out of greatness. You let temporary pain define your permanent future. You let fear convince you that you're not enough. But the truth is, you were never meant to follow your feelings. You were meant to lead them, to bring them under your mission, not the other way around. The most dangerous people in the world are not the ones with the loudest voices. They're the ones who have mastered themselves, the ones who can feel fear and still move, the ones who can be tired and still show up, the ones who can face disappointment and not retreat. That's discipline. That's control. And that's what separates the few who rise from the many who fall. You can't build a future while being owned by every emotion that passes through you. You'll start projects and never finish them. You'll enter relationships and sabotage them. You'll get opportunities and walk away because it didn't feel right at that moment. But your feelings were never designed to be your compass. Truth is, vision is, and the more you rely on feelings, the more doors you'll close with your own hands. God gave you emotions as signals, not as steering wheels. They're meant to inform you, not rule you. You can feel everything, but you must obey only what aligns with your calling. Because if feelings run your life, failure will rule your life. But if discipline runs your life, purpose will carry you further than motivation ever could. So if you want to break cycles, if you want to stop starting over, if you want to actually finish something, master your emotions, you're not weak for having them. You're powerful when they no longer have you. That's where true freedom begins. That's where failure loses its grip. And that's when destiny starts to rise. Now, hear this, because this is where it all comes together. You weren't put here to drift through your youth. You weren't put here to waste time trying to please people, chase emotions, or survive day to day, hoping something great just happens. You were put here to conquer. You were put here to build. You were put here with fire in your bones, vision in your spirit, and time in your hands. And what you do with it will echo through every chapter of your life. The world doesn't need another copy. It doesn't need another distracted soul wasting golden years on cheap validation. The world needs you, the real you, focused, detached from nonsense, locked in on your assignment, and fearless in the face of discomfort. If you don't take your youth seriously, nobody else will. If you don't protect your time, this world will devour it. If you don't rise in discipline, you'll drown in regret. So choose now. Choose clarity over chaos, purpose over pleasure, obedience over emotion. Power doesn't come from being seen, it comes from being prepared. And greatness doesn't come to those who feel like it, it comes to those who move anyway. You weren't born to be owned by feelings, ruled by failure, or enslaved by fear. You were born to reign. This is your season, this is your hour. You will never get this youth back again. So don't waste it, don't cheapen it, don't bury it. Build with it, lead with it, and make it count.